indicate if you can. Kindly indicate if you can hear me and you can see my screen by giving a thumbs up in the chat box, please. As you may know, the theme of today's training is socio-economic impact assessment, measuring and managing double materiality and long-term value. Before we go any further, kindly take note of the rules of engagement during this training. Please ensure that your Zoom mic is muted throughout the duration of this training, unless you have been given a go-ahead to comment or ask questions at the appropriate time in the course of the training. Meanwhile, to give the opening remarks and officially declare this training open, please allow me to introduce Mr. Eustace Onebu. He is the Vice Chair of the Executive Council and member of the Learning and Development Directorate at Spain. He also serves as the President and Lead Consultant of the International Network for Corporate Social Responsibility. Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
All right, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's training organized by the Sustainability Institute of Professional Institute of Nigeria. As you may know already, my name is Eustace Onebu, and I serve as the Vice Chair of the Executive Council. I also serve as a member of the Learning and Development Directorate organizing this training today. So on behalf of my director, Eunice Sampson, I welcome every one of you to this yet another engagement of number of topical issues on sustainability. Today, double materiality being handled by a renowned professor of sustainability and business impact. So we are going to be discussing different aspects of double materiality. I encourage you to take notes and also put down your questions either in the chat box or you write it down, you jot it down. By the time it gets to the questions and answers period, then we may ask you to ask your questions. We may allow you to ask your questions. So it's very important that also to know that sustainability is no longer any commerce profession. So what we're doing today is to help you understand best practices, which is not just applicable in Nigeria, but across the globe, across the world. And I'm delighted that the person taking the training today is an international consultant, has handled quite a number of projects. I mean, we are going to be going through his profile in a bit. He has handled quite a number of projects across the world. Presently, he's handling a mega project in South Africa. He has worked on a number of those in the United Kingdom, where he actually resides. He is a key member of the Spain Institute of Professionals, sustainability professionals. So please listen to him, ask your questions, and enjoy the training. Once again, thank you for joining us. And this is a free training, by the way. We have decided, the Board of Trustees and the Executive Council of Spain have decided that we are not going to charge any fees for the year 2024 for all our trainings and webinars as a value addition to our members, but we have also extended that to non-members. So if you are not yet a member, please do well to join us as a member of Spain, because that's the only way you can be part of the sustainability group, sustainability profession, and learn and be able to acquire the knowledge and skills to be competent in what you do. So welcome to the training and enjoy the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eustace, for that opening remark. Dear participants, kindly take down your questions during the training as there will be a question and answer session immediately after. Next, I have the honor of introducing our esteemed facilitator for today's training, Dr. Bankole Allibay. Dr. Bankole Allibay is a seasoned environmental, social, and governance expert with 15 years of experience in providing end-to-end sustainability solutions. He specializes in project life cycle impact analysis and management, aiming to de-risk investments and ensure shared prosperity. Bankole has worked with public and private sectors, multilateral development banks, and industry-specific organizations, mastering various sustainability safeguard systems and standards. As CEO and managing consultant at Transatlantic Development Limited, Bankole oversees the social performance technical units and coordinates multidisciplinary consultants. He is a member of CIPR, IEMA, and IAIA, and has published research on various sustainability topics, including gender vulnerabilities, data management, livelihood, and development-induced displacement. Bankole's expertise spans project risk analysis, impact assessments, impact management planning, and environmental and social due diligence. His extensive practice across Africa has equipped him with a deep understanding of sustainability laws and regulations on the continent. Dear participants, please join me to welcome Dr. Bankole as he takes today's training. Dr. Bankole, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, indeed. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bankole, and thanks for the introduction. Yes, I have over 20 years experience. I've been working quite a bit. I don't know if everyone can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, Prof. Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. So yes, we're going to start very quickly. Today's topic is very close to my heart. My name is Bankole. As you may have heard, I am an environmental and social risk management expert, and I support multilateral development institutions and multilateral development banks globally, from the World Bank to our International Financial Corporation of IFC, the Asia Development Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and other private sector institutions, countries, advisories, and all of that. So today we'll be talking about something which is very fundamental, not just to the high street sustainability discourse, but also to the operational principle generally when it comes to understanding impact and managing impact global group. And can I put on the slide, please, or give me the right to share?
Yes, sir. You can share for me, sir. You can share, sir.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Please do let me know when you see my screen.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet, sir. It hasn't popped up. No, we can't.
Okay, it's actually showing here. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen. We can see your screen, sir.
Right. So good morning once again, everyone, and thank you so much for making time to be part of this experience. I will try to be as quick as I can, but please, if you have any questions or clarifications at any point in time, like Mr. Eustace has put across on every member of the team, do take notes, and then we're going to get into the question and answer session. Once again, my name is Bankole. I'm Dr. Bankole Allibay, and I'm the CEO.
Hello, sir. We can hear you. we can't hear you, sir, if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's cracking.
I think
okay.
that could be technology.
Mm.
Can you hear
Okay,
me
you're
now?
fine now. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. So I was saying that we're looking at socioeconomic impact assessment, measuring and managing double materiality and long-term value. And the good news is that the concept of socioeconomic impact in itself is a wide discourse. It's basically talking about the entirety of what impact is when it comes to the social component. But the good news around this conversation is that we have actually created a niche for ourselves in this conversation, and we will be looking specifically at measuring and managing double materiality. And in this case, we will start with the concept definition. Usually, when you do learning, you learn from what you know to what is unknown. So we're going to start from defining what is socioeconomic impact assessment. Now, I don't want to read out the slides to you because, of course, it's on your screen, but I want you to think about it in a reflective manner about what constitutes impact. When you say impact, what comes to your mind? For the scientist, a narrative like the Newton's first law of motion naturally comes to mind. Right. Now, the Newton's first law of motion basically states that every object will remain at a state of rest or in a uniform position on a straight line. Will be at a state of rest, uniform position on a straight line until an external factor reacts onto it. Which means if you have a community that exists in a particular location and you do not invest in that community, people don't build new houses, they do not bring new businesses, that community will maintain a baseline, and that baseline will continue to be a parallel line until external force react with it, until you bring a development, you bring a business, you bring an investment, you bring a social good or any negative thing to come to that community will maintain status quo. But of course, ceteris paribus hardly happens with human beings because all things cannot be equal. So when those external factors react on that status quo, the status quo changes, and whatever happens at that point in time becomes an impact. An impact in this conversation can either be positive or be negative. So when something happens to that situation, to that project, to that community, to that society, positively or negatively, there will be an impact. And at the back of that impact, it could be social, it could be environmental, it could be socioeconomic, it could be whatever impact. In this case, we're talking about socioeconomic impact. And that is why the experts have come together with this definition to say socioeconomic impact is a critical process which organizations use to evaluate the potential socioeconomic impact of projects and policies, which means that let's assume the community is on its own without any project coming in. You don't have impact. But the moment there is a development project, the moment there is an impact in that community, there's an investment in that community, positively so or negatively so, there will be an impact. And to measure that impact, that is why we are here today. And measuring socioeconomic impact has become a critical tool amongst organizations, amongst multilateral development banks, amongst investors to really understand what exactly are the socioeconomic impact in which our investment, our sponsorship, our support mechanism is actually having on the people at the community level. But then you don't wake up one morning and be able to measure impact, because you cannot build something on nothing. You can't build something on nothing. You need to understand what exists before you go to what could be. And at that point, will take us to the next point of the conversation, baselines. So what is baseline? Baseline is simply the as-is analysis of any environment to really understand what exists prior to project situation or prior to impact. So socioeconomic baseline describes the socioeconomic conditions prior to project impact. So I'll give you an example. A place has been declared a free trade zone. It used to be a fishing community, but it's now been declared as a free trade zone. The baseline of that community is fishing. The attributes of what you find in that community is a water body, is a banana boat, fishing boat, hook, net, fishermen, hook and tackle, fish market, smoking gears, market women buying smoked fish, traders, middlemen buying from the fishermen, selling to the local traders, and then processors of the fish and so on and so forth. That is the baseline. But the very moment that place becomes a free trade zone, the entire architecture of the environment changes. Fishing becomes very, very minimal, if not existent in that community. You start talking about construction, you talk about project managers, you talk about design, architecture, you talk about structural engineers, fabrication engineers, you talk about different kind of actors that come into that environment to now begin to take shape of that environment. It means then that the community has moved from its baseline to its impact stage. Baseline is foundational to future impact assessment. So if you don't understand your baseline, it is near impossible for you to understand what the impact is. Because whatever you know at that point in which you see the impact is the fruits of the action. It is not the action in itself. And let's not forget, the reaction is a function of the action. So if the reaction is a function of the action, then you need to understand the root cause of the action. Because until you manage the root cause of the action, you cannot manage the reaction. So baseline is foundational for you to measure impact. And socio-economic baseline collects, codifies, and benchmarks data using quantitative, qualitative, and participatory method, which means for the most part, evidently, in our years of experience for over 20 years, for example, my personal experience, it is impossible for you to collect quantitative data alone to measure impact. It is also impossible for you to collect qualitative data to measure impact. Neither would you apply a participatory method for something that is quite empirical, like environmental data or demography, to get to your destination when it comes to measuring impact. So it is critical for you to adopt a mixed method approach or mixed methodology to ensure that you plug into the different complexities and dysfunctional situations that exist in any environment to pick out, skillfully glean out the socioeconomic baseline, which gives you parameter to be able to measure the socioeconomic impact down the line. So baselines are fundamental to all forms of impact when it comes to sustainability management. Either you're looking at your market access, you're looking at vulnerability, you're looking at environmental risk, you're looking at social risk, you're looking at development-induced displacement, you're looking at market access, whatever you're looking at. If you're looking at climate change, life cycle analysis, if you do not understand what your baseline is, chances are your impact assessment will be at best a guesstimate or an educated guess. So as such, for us to get to the bigger conversation around socioeconomic impact, we need to understand our baselines. So what are the principles of socioeconomic impact assessment? So socioeconomic impact assessment needs to be holistic. So you cannot pick and choose what constitutes your socioeconomic impact. I'll give you an example. A beverage company cannot say, oh, because we only use good water, we do not need to check the amount of wastewater that exists around us. We don't need to check about the health and impact of our project around the people. We don't need to check about land acquisition around us. We don't need to check about the air quality, the noise quality. We need to check about the flora and fauna. We don't need to check about biodiversity. We don't need to check about ecosystem services. We don't need to check about the risk and impact related to fragility, conflict, and violence. All of these things in one way or the other contribute significantly to your baselines and would definitely be impacted by your investment or your project or your even existence. As a result, impact assessment, socioeconomic impact assessment needs to measure the totality of this. For all of those of it that exist within the social spectrum, they need to be skillfully measured and objectively so that they can be properly indicated when impact exists. And they also help you to shape what constitutes impact at the back of the project design. Stakeholder involvement. I often say to people, anywhere I train in the world, whether I'm in Australia or I'm in Philippines, I'm in South Africa, I'm in America, or whatever, I always say to them that it's good to have a PhD from Oxford or from Cambridge or from UCL, London or Harvard, and it's important for you to also have practice all over the world. But ultimately, the local people and stakeholders are still the experts that discuss. There is no how you can explain concepts such as vulnerability to a single mother living in a community where there is no water, there's no electricity, and it needs to walk about 10 kilometers to the market to cater for 5 children. No matter your knowledge of economics at that point in time, you will be lost because you cannot understand the human cost of that action. As a result, the same parameter applies to stakeholders when it comes to impact assessment. You cannot single-handedly think about or hypothesize to the point of not involving your stakeholders as much as possible to gather information. So it is imperative for every stakeholder engagement activity to involve as many stakeholders as possible, particularly essential stakeholders and direct stakeholders, community people, your investors, your staff, your local people, your project area of influence, your service providers, your value chain. They are critical to measure your baseline and ultimately your stakeholder, your socioeconomic impact. And their perspective would help you not just to verify information, but to also triangulate information. Because, for example, increase in price of ethanol, for example, will mean that it will be difficult for people to consume a lot of alcohol down the line. But also, they're not the only people that consume alcohol. There are people that use alcohol in the health industry. There are a lot of people that use alcohol in food processing. And there are a lot of people that use alcohol even in combustion. So all of these stakeholders need to be aggregated before we say that the price of X is negative or positive. So stakeholder involvement in socioeconomic impact is critical. Sustainability focus. You can collect information. Basically, what's information? It's basically a set of data codified in a particular manner for us to make an informed decision. So you can collect information for whatever purpose. You can get a particular set of information strictly for just to manipulate the system. You can collect a particular set of information just for you to break the rule. But when it comes to socioeconomic impact assessment, it is critical for the professionals to understand that this has to be sustainability focused. It has to be sustainability focused because it has to look into the total spectrum of impact to the immediate and the wider stakeholders. Think about it like scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 when it comes to climate analysis. Scope 1 is what you generate. Scope 2 is within your line of business. Scope 3 is not something outside your not totally outside your control, but immediately outside your control. So you cannot think about the impact and just say, I'm just thinking about it in line of who am I selling to or what the regulator is looking at. Because ultimately, it comes back to the business. So you have to be sustainability focused. You look about it. Does it support the planet? Does it support the people? Does it support my profit margin? How does it affect the global community? How does it affect my customers? And how does it affect my business down the line? So you need to think about in that format whenever you think about socioeconomic impact. So this principle of sustainability focus is very critical when you talk about socioeconomic impact assessment. Evidence-based analysis. So in one part of my life, I was addicted to data, and I specialize in one area of my master's program in data management and sustainability. And one thing I've realized is that data is not lost, really. They reside somewhere. It's just for us to create adequate methodology and responsive mechanism to harvest the data, process them in an independent manner, and present them to the market or present them to the situation to solve these problems. Unfortunately, for the most part, people collect data being biased. And it is impossible for you to collect data being biased for you to get an independent feedback. Of course, there is a degree of biasness when it comes to any form of data collection, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% sometimes. But when you go into a data collection process with about 45, 50% biased mind already, it is impossible for you to come up with a transparent feedback. If you're collecting a materiality data and you're basically looking for your stakeholders to say that you are the best in the industry, and whoever does not say that to you, you expunge that questionnaire. Technically, it is impossible for you to get a transparent feedback system that will feed into your materiality study and ultimately into your sustainability discourse. So evidence-based analysis, utilizing a robust data, they call it the rigor of knowledge. When you're at postdoctoral level, doctoral or postdoctoral level, they call it the rigor of knowledge. Rigor of knowledge is the ability for you to not just triangulate, but also triangulate to ensure that you are not echoing your own intention when it comes to sustainability. And this is very important because you cannot collect a data and then manipulate that data and give information to the market. Because when you do that, people will make a decision at the back of that decision, at the back of that information you're given, and ultimately you will inadvertently, well, in this case, deliberately, because it might look inadvertent at the beginning, but ultimately becomes a deliberate act of misleading people and ultimately greenwashing for the organization. So it is very critical for us to look at evidence-based data and evidence-based analysis when it comes to decision making as a critical principle of socio-economic impact. So what is the business aim of socio-economic assessment? There are 1,001 business cases. If for any, it helps the organization to be in the know of its own situation. You are in the know, you know where you are. You understand where you are in the grand scheme of things. You understand what your situation is. But we've actually itemized some here, and I'll quickly go through them. The first one is informed decision making. There's a concept called free, prior, and informed consent. Of course, it does not apply directly to what we're discussing, but what it means is that when impact applies to a category of people, let's say they call them the indigenous people or vulnerable people, they need to have a free, prior, and informed consent. Informed consent means that you are aware of that situation, you are knowledgeable of that situation, and you have all the options available to you before you make a decision. Oftentimes in organization, when we talk about SEIs, we don't make informed decisions because we don't even know what exists. But when you conduct a proper socioeconomic impact assessment, it gives you a 360 view of your situation and helps you to get to an informed position before you make a decision. You know what the odds are. You have a clarity of purpose, and you are able to also see what can you modulate to change the narrative for better, or what can you do to seize a particular course of action to solve a set of problems. And the good news about sustainability is that there are organic problems and there are mainstream problems. Organic problems are problems that when you solve them at the base, you don't need to worry about the branches. They die a natural death. So when you solve those problems, they solve so many other problems for you. So socioeconomic impact assessment helps you to get to this point of the discourse, because if you don't understand what your problems are organically, chances are you begin to feed the fruits when the roots is growing stronger or when the leaves is brown. It helps to make an informed decision. It helps with informed sustainability component of sustainability report systems, because you need to understand your socioeconomic posture before you can think about your materiality position, and your material factor plays a critical role in your sustainability reporting. So if you want to ensure that you have a transparent and compliant sustainability reporting, or compliant, even the regulatory requirement, even according to the Nigerian Sustainability Banking Principle, you're talking about the Environmental Impact Assessment Act in Nigeria, you're talking about the IFRS, ISSB, IFC Performance Standard. These socioeconomic impact assessment is critical for you to be able to get a foot on the door when it talks about the wider impact management. Community relations is another very good example. Nature naturally has a vacuum. So if you're not informing people, you are misinforming them, because everybody will jump into conclusions. And that's what the brains are for. They think about situations, they modulate it, and they spread rumors, and they say all sorts of things about you. So it is very important for you to be able to conduct your socioeconomic impact regularly, to ensure that you now understand what has changed from your baseline situation, because your baseline will not be the same. The moment you begin to invest in a particular ecosystem, either it's a remote community, an urban community, or wherever it is that your investment or your project or your program is, there would be an impact. And because there's going to be an impact, the community will jump to conclusions if you do not conduct a socioeconomic analysis to get first-hand information from them. And in that process, you can lose yourself. So what do? You need to consistently engage the community and conduct a socioeconomic impact assessment, and it gives you value for it. Sustainable development. I'm sure for the most part, almost everyone on this program understands what sustainable developments are, and there are 16 of them. And the good news is that number 17, the SDG 17, talks about the collaboration. And it is impossible for you to solve the world problem. It is impossible for you to solve the world problem. So it is important and it's critical for you to ensure that your sustainability discourse, your sustainability journey speaks to sustainable development, and you cannot attain sustainable development by yourself. It requires significant level of collaboration to ensure positive outcome. So by identifying and mitigating negative impact while enhancing positive outcome, socio-economic impact supports an organization's contribution to long-term sustainability. So when you look at poverty in urban areas, some other people are looking at poverty in areas, some other people are looking at water access, some people are looking at food, some people are looking at water, some people are looking at biodiversity. All these factors put together contribute to sustainable development, because the global thinking around sustainability is universal. You can't solve a problem around food security and leave security of lives and property at risk. So collaboration is key, but more importantly, socioeconomic impact assessment helps you to understand the fundamentals that sit at the bedrock of the wider sustainability thinking. So socioeconomic impact assessment helps you to attain sustainable development. So we've said a lot at this point, but I want us to take a quick reflection at one thing that has cut across everything that we've been talking about all along. And that thing is actually the stakeholder. It's actually the stakeholder. And then every time when we talk about sustainability, everyone talks about the stakeholder mapping.
Matching your brain, okay, what could you do? And then when you come up with something, if there's exercises, you see from how the examiner responding, you're like, okay, I'm not 100% sure, but then don't you think he or she can suggest something? That's why they call it discussion. There's going to be some sort of interaction.
Hello, please, everyone, please kindly ensure that you're on mute. You are muted. Your mic is muted, please.
Thank you. So I was talking about stakeholder. And I was saying that stakeholders are people whose your action or their actions affect or influence your activity. So according to ISO 26000 clause 5.3.2, stakeholders are organizations or individuals that have one or more interest in any decision or activity of an organization. Because this interest can be affected by organization, a relation with organization is created. This relationship seems to be formal. Relationship created by interests exist whether or not the parties are aware of it. An organization may not always be aware of its stakeholders, although should attempt to identify them. Similarly, many stakeholders may not be aware of the potential, of an organization affect their interest. So let me go back to my first example of the free trade zone being declared in a fishing community. The investor in the free trade zone, remember, they will be dealing directly with the government. In their mind, they have no business whatsoever with the head of the fishing village in their mind, because their tenant is the government and they have no business with these local people. They've bought the land, they've paid for it, and they can run, they can do whatever they want. But let's take a step back. They need access to the water. Who uses the water? The fishermen. What do they do there? Their livelihood. Do they have other livelihoods? No. What do they do with their livelihood? Survival. And survival comes first. So even in their unknowing that this guy is their primary stakeholders, even for this fishing community, also not knowing these other guys are the primary stakeholder to them. The investor is the primary stakeholder to them because they look at the government as the one who has acquired the land. Both of them are primary stakeholders to each other. The fact that they do not know does not stop the conversation. So this interest can actually be perceived, can be real, can be opined, can be secondary, can be primary. Whoever whose action influences yours or yours influences theirs is within your stakeholder quadrant. And to identify your stakeholders, you need to critically, consciously sit back and blue sky around what you do, how you do it, how you got into that business, what is your exit strategy, what is your growth program, what is your expansion plan. You need to think about all of that and see who is part of that process, directly or indirectly. And everybody that you can identify within that process will form the publics are people that are not just your stakeholders, but the action of your third party stakeholders affects them directly or indirectly. For example, as an organization in Enugu State, if you do not pay tax to the federal government, it does not affect of course, you think that it does not affect, it affects only the government of Enugu State. But if that tax is supposed to be paid to the federal government, it directly affects the people of Kano and the people of Lagos, because the amount of money that's supposed to go into the threshold of the tax box would be reduced by your non-payment of tax. As a result, they might not directly be your stakeholder, but they are what you call your publics. So there are stakeholders who your action influences directly, and there are publics who your action does not influence directly. So we put this little design here for you to look at what exactly does your stakeholder look like. So the first part talks about who your stakeholders are, and this is a very miniature version. You have a myriad of stakeholders, but these ones are some of the ones that basically just comes to mind. Some of them are internal and some of them are external. The CEO of the organization, the board, the regulators, the government, the clients and customers, the value chain, the publics, the shareholders, the management team, and the employees. Now, in every organization have this set. It's wider, it could be wider, but every organization have this particular circle of stakeholders. And these stakeholders have different capacity when it comes to their interaction with the organization. And that is why we've put the second diagram there to tell you about influence and interest. There are a lot of people that have influence on the project, but have low interest. As a result, this quadrant, you will find it in most internationally approved stakeholder engagement plan, which is basically a document that tells you about who your stakeholders are, how do you map your stakeholders, how do you engage with them, what method do you use, what methodology do you apply, how often do you engage with them, how do you document your feedback system, what are your grievances management procedure, what are grievances documentation escalation procedure, and do people have access to law court, or do they have access to alternative dispute resolution systems to ensure that grievances does not cripple them or cripple the business. So in developing every stakeholder engagement plan, world-class stakeholder engagement plan, you have this quadrant. And this quadrant gives you an idea of how to manage your stakeholders. There are stakeholders that you have to monitor their activity. So whatever you do, you need to monitor the activity of the government. It is called government relations. It does not mean giving anybody bribe or anybody tip or doing anything. It's basically understanding the trajectory of the policy framework of the government on how it affects your business. If the government makes a policy today about increasing taxes, reducing import duties, for example, the government has just declared 150 days import reduction or import free import duty holiday for food to ensure there's food security in the country. Organizations in the food and beverage industry would need to monitor that policy very skillfully and think about how it affects their business. The same thing, if the government makes a policy that talks about how to control effluents, water management, all the organizations in the beverage industry needs to follow up with that. But then there are organizations, there are also stakeholders that you need to keep satisfied. You don't need to just monitor them, you need to keep them satisfied. One of such stakeholders is your investor. If your investors are not satisfied, you do not have a business. If your employees are not satisfied, you do not have a business. If your customers are not satisfied, you do not have a business. You need to understand how to deal with these different set of stakeholders. There are those that you need to manage closely. And those people, if you don't manage them closely, you're going to get into trouble. There are those that you just need to keep informed. You just need to give them information. Let them be in the know. They're going to be satisfied. That is enough, because they don't bring money to the business. They don't, either by investment or by sales, they don't bring money to the business, and they don't have the regulatory powers, but they can actually put you in trouble. So you need to keep them informed and explain yourself to them. They have high interest. Sometimes they have low interest. Sometimes they have high influence. Sometimes they have low influence. So it is critical at every point in time to understand, when you put your first circle together, you need to now put all these people in the first circle into the second diagram, which is the quadrant, to know how exactly you need to deal with them. And this is very important when you're mapping and engaging with your stakeholders. So what is the process of engaging with your stakeholders? The process of engaging stakeholders can comprise of these 5 steps. Of course, there are lots of methodologies in carrying out this, but they all fall within the same framework or similar framework. For example, if you read the works of Shannon and Weaver, or you read the works of Desai and Porter, or even if you read the works of Joyce Tosanwomi, or you read the works of Hickey and Mohan, or you read the works of Wright, or any of these, or even if you read the works of economists like this leader of populist economy that won the Nobel Prize in 1999, Amartya Sen, the engagement protocol and procedure still follows the same process. So if you read books like Development is Freedom, you still find the same conversation, still pervade the entire narrative. So you need to identify and list stakeholders, because you cannot engage people you don't know. You need to identify them. You need to list them out. You need to be sure that they actually influence your action, or your action influence theirs. Secondly, you need to understand the purpose behind engaging these stakeholders, which means that you need to start by saying, what exactly is that stake? This guy wants to control us. What is his stake in this conversation? How does this affect him? How does it influence him? How do we influence him? Because it's only when you understand that influence that you can craft a bespoke key message that can resonate with that stakeholder. Because if you don't craft a key message that resonates with me, and you're talking to me, for example, about astrophysics and how artificial intelligence can help astrophysics to generate some form of nuclear energy, okay, I'm a sustainability professional. If it is not baseline impact risk, except if there is an impact and risk component to it. If it's not, I am not interested. So you need to know where my interest is before you engage with me. And that thing has to resonate with me and be of interest to me before it can pique my interest. You need to develop a plan for conducting engagement. Now, one of the issues that we usually have when it comes to stakeholder engagement is the fact that we conduct stakeholder engagement in a reactive manner. What does that mean? You start a business in a particular community, you're running it, a gas packaging plant, your business is doing well. You don't know the local chief, you don't know the police commissioner, you don't know anybody around the area, you don't even talk to your neighbors, you're just doing your business peacefully as a gentleman. And you don't tell them that at 5 o'clock every day there's going to be 200 trucks coming to your plant. You don't tell them that there's going to be expansion of the road. You don't tell them about the speed of the vehicles. You don't tell them about the local workers that you're bringing, the foreign workers that you're bringing in that can be a threat to their children. You don't tell them about the trucks. You don't tell them about the effluence in that environment. You're just doing your own thing because you don't want to disturb anybody. And then one day, the truck failed brake, hit a house, did not kill anybody, thankfully, but destroy somebody's home, and you want to have an engagement because that is the time you now want to talk. At that point, it is already too late. People will see you as a stranger and they would seize your social license to operate, which means that you would lose the capacity to be able to be a part of that community. So you need to develop a plan for conducting stakeholder engagement prior to even having any activity on ground. Because like I said at the beginning, nature naturally happens to vehicle. If you don't inform people, you are misinforming them. Inadequate communication is miscommunication. Inadequate engagement is misengagement because people will see you for what they think you are, even if that's not your character. So inadvertently, you will pass a message that does not represent who you are. So in stakeholder engagement, you need to develop a plan, a methodology, an engagement protocol, key messages, engagement processes, a grievance management process. People would have a clear understanding of what you do, how you do them, and that will help you to proactively respond to problems even before they happen. And then you initiate discussion with the stakeholders. Initially, at the beginning of this conversation, I said something around when you have conversation with your stakeholders, you're basically not just saying, good morning, my name is Chief X, I'm here to talk to you. Can you sit down? Can you sit down? Can everybody sit down? I don't like it when people talk when I'm talking, I'm so and so. You can't come to people's homes and tell them how to behave. So when you are engaging people, you need to develop methodologies and methods. You need to develop a methodology that is formed of methods that first suits their position. For example, methods such as key informant engagement, focus group discussion, community entry programs, prioritization and ranking, they perform different functions when it comes to stakeholder engagement, and you can't replace them for one another. And when you make the mistake of missing these methodologies, you're going to get the organization into serious problem that even sometimes the problem you're trying to solve, you're creating more of it. Then initiate discussion with stakeholders. Then sustain continual communication with and follow through on commitment made during dialogue. Of course, people make a lot of promises the political way, but it's important for us to know at this point that when you say something at the community, it's in print. And when I say community, I do not mean a local community, even at the community of practice, community of your stakeholders, even if I high street bank, when you say things to people, you need to document it and you need to reflect on it many times before you say it, because when you say it, people keep it. And even in this era of social media, you can't run away when you say something. The internet will not forget. Even when you delete your own post, other people will screenshot it. So let's go to the meat of today. Everything we've been talking about so far is just like the preamble. So let's go to the conversation. Double materiality, identification and measurement. When we say double materiality, I will try and go to the basics. Like one of my professors will say, if you understand it, you say it in simple language. What is materiality? Materiality, simply put, are things that are material, critical, and important to a discourse. They're important. What is important to you? What is material to you? What is crucial to you? What is critical to you? So when you talk about double materiality, you're basically looking at a materiality perspective or a materiality discourse that does not just look at the impact of the business in terms of positivity or negativity, but it looks at the impact of the business on the society and the impact of society on the business and also on the finances of the business. I'll try to throw in a caveat here. I know a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not an activist of sustainability. The truth of the matter is that if any business model or any sustainability narrative does not project financial or economic viability, it can never be sustainable because sustainability in itself is not cheap. As a result, you need an innovative perspective into every discourse within sustainability framework to ensure that whatever parameter you are projecting in terms of sustainability also drives economic value, both for the organization and for your stakeholders. You cannot bring a bill of $20 million to your stakeholder when you're making a profit of $25 million and tell them to implement this methodology that will take away almost 70% of your profit, and there is no immediate mid-term or long-term value for the organization. If it does not make financial sense, it can never make sustainability sense. So every sustainability discourse has to be innovative enough to carry along a double materiality perspective in the discourse, which means when you think about a sustainability parameter, you need to also think about how you can drive economic value in the same breath. So let's get into it. Double materiality assesses sustainability from two perspectives: the impact of sustainability on the use of company financial performance, which is outside in or financial materiality, and company's impact on society and the environment, which is inside out. For example, are we making money? Yes. Is our efforts affecting the community? Yes. Okay. So let's look for ways in which we can continue to make money so we can be in business. But at the same time, take away all this impact from people, and where the impact cannot be taken away, let's find a way to create a compensatory procedure for the impact of it or the part of it that we cannot alleviate or we cannot eradicate totally. A company might face increased costs due to cotton shortages, due to climate-related drought, which is inside out. Similarly, expensive use of non-biodegradable material contribute to environmental pollution inside out. So if you are not making money, or if you're making money and you're having impact, your materiality should not just be focused on what is the impact of because there is business. If there is no business, you're likely not going to be hired. So conducting double materiality has a lot of advantages, and to a large extent, it's actually a critical component of organizational survival. And I know a lot of people would think that's a sweeping statement. It's not, because you do not have business if you do not have a sustainable business. Let me say that again. You do not have a business if you do not have a sustainable business. You can't spend $10 million. You can't make $10 million today and not invest in your sustainability and expect to make 11 million tomorrow. It's not the whole in the organization is maintained in a sustainable manner, which means it's sustainable for the environment, it's sustainable for the people, and it's sustainable for the planet, and it's sustainable for your profits as well. It's 3 Ps: planet, people, profit. So conducting double materiality assessment is crucial to help you identify and address your sustainability risk as it arises around your financial and your impact matrices. So if you look at financial materiality, it's a sustainable financial materiality is for financial perspective to trigger or may trigger financial effort on the company. So sustainable materiality, sustainability matter triggers financial effects on the company when it generates risk or opportunity that have influence or may likely influence the company's cash flow, performance, position, cost of capital, and access to finance. If you own a modular refinery and you do not understand that your right of way that brings crude oil from your from the well, the right of way that brings crude oil from the well to your refinery needs proper maintenance and community engagement. You think about it as an external risk or the risk that belongs to your service provider. You will learn very quickly when there is a damage on that pipeline, because you will learn firsthand how value chain can drown businesses and how your engagement can destroy the entire, your non-engagement can destroy the entire investment. Because if you don't have crude oil, there's nothing for you to process. So it is important for you to think about the holistic picture of your business habitus or business environment and how these things are critical and material to your survival. And it's only when you have done this, done it skillfully, that you can actually say for a fact that you conducted critical engagement in terms of socioeconomic analysis. Because if you just look at what is within your environment alone, regardless of your refinement, quality of what you do, and so on and so forth, it still boils down to the fact that you are dependent, you are depending on many other stakeholders to function. As a result, your financial materiality oftentimes is not just how much money you make, but the potentialities of you not being able to make money. So, further, impact materiality has to do with what impact does materiality have on your environment. Remember, I started this conversation with the Newton's first law of motion. An object continues to be in a state of rest. If you look at the diagram, these 4 balls will be on a state of rest forever, the way they are standing. But you see this one ball coming. The moment that ball touches them, the center no longer hold. They will consistently be moving in that direction, and they will form another line. And then when something else happens to that, as a form of impact, they create another system. So impact materiality is, in sustainability matter, impact materiality, when it pertains to the company's material or actual or potential positive or negative impact on people, on the environment over the short, medium, and long term. A material sustainability matters from impact perspective and includes the cost or contributed to by companies and impact, which are directly linked to the company's operation, products, services, and through its business relationship. I'll go back to my own example, the fishing community and the free trade zone. The fishing community was in a state of rest, and then there is investment. And then there will be change in the culture because there will be influx of people. And then in livelihoods, because people will not be moving from aspiring to be a fisherman to aspiring to be a factory worker or to be a service provider or a trader within the free trade zone environment. So at that point in time, the material factor has from overfishing, destruction of using energy, the impact will now move to land acquisition, it will move to pollution, it will move to development-induced displacement, distortion of livelihoods. The impact situation will change. But you cannot measure this impact on the people and projects as totally different from the financial portfolio of the organizations because they feed off each other. And when there is a crisis in one part of the discourse, it would naturally become a carryover effect or a burden, a secondary burden on the other party. And that's where it comes to this conversation. The fluidity of materiality. Very, very, very quickly, most times, an impact materiality like spillage, right? Like spillage or damage of pipeline, which is an environmental risk or socio-economic risk or community risk or health and safety risk, which we would naturally categorize as impact materiality, would quickly become a financial materiality the moment there is no crude supply to the refinery. So in earnest, you cannot measure one and leave the other. Like I said, cogito ergo sum, you only exist, you only know because you exist. If you don't exist, you don't know. So you cannot have a business that does not think about its finances. And you cannot have finances that does not think about its impact. So the double materiality is a double-edged sword that helps us to balance where exactly is our head when it comes to how do we impact our environment, and at the same time, how does our environment impact our operations. So identifying financial and non-financial materiality, companies but not only consider how their activities across the entire value chain impact people and the environment, but also how the sustainability issues and environment can affect the company. For example, if there's significant amount of pollution, water pollution in an environment, it would affect you. Either you just live in the environment or you work there, it would affect you. So when you think about your financial materiality, you look at the climate risk, resource availability, ecosystem service, reputational risk, and sanitary risk. If you look about your impact materiality, you look at human rights, air pollution, resource use and recycling, water consumption, greenhouse gas emission, development-induced displacement, vulnerability, fragility, conflict and violence, so many factors. And these factors feed off each other. I'll give you a very quick example. Think about setting up a solar plant in a part of northern Nigeria in 1995. First of all, the cost of land is cheap, the security is guaranteed, and then there is a very safe environment for you to do whatever business. But take that same solar plant to Abbottabad today, or take it to Niger Republic, take it to the Tuareg zone in Mali. You are likely going to pay at least 20% of, if the project is a 100 megawatt project, which is about 150, you're likely to pay about 50 million for the cost of maintaining security in that environment. So the material factor of impact risk in that component will naturally affect your financial baseline and your financial materiality. So it is important for you to think about your materiality as both financial and impact driven. So identifying and measure materiality. Impact on people and environment is inside out, which means that the impact on the people and the environment is critical when it comes to double materiality. It provides you with risk and opportunity outside in view, which means that when you understand your double materiality, it gives you a perspective of what is important to a particular set of stakeholders. For example, what does the community want? What do they need versus what they want? Because these are two different things when it comes to community engagement. What do they need and what do they want? And then it also helps you to understand where they are in their growth, in their development, and in their mindset so that you can make an informed decision. It helps you to manage your stakeholders in identifying them, in mapping them, in engaging them. I think I've discussed all of this earlier. So it is very important for you to conduct your materiality, and it helps you to also measure them in the same breath. Materiality determination. When you're determining your materiality, you need to conduct an assessment, which means that you need to determine whether the identified sustainability issues are material. Of course, when you go to community, I have worked in at least about 5,000 communities in my career, more than 5,000 communities in my career. And I can tell you for a fact that if you build a school, a hospital, a clinic, a rail line, and an airport for a community today, if you go there tomorrow, they have a fresh need. It's very simple. They are not stupid people and they are not mad. It's very simple. The human wants and needs are unsatiable. So the moment you learn that as a development expert, the better for you when you manage communities. So it's important for you to know that it can't end. But at every point in time, when you engage them, you can differentiate their needs from their wants, and that helps you. More importantly, you need to involve your stakeholders. In every sustainability matter, you cannot make a decision by yourself. You make this decision with informed opinion of your stakeholders because they would help you to actually shape your thinking at every point in time. Threshold. You need to establish a threshold for reporting on financial materiality based on likelihood and scale of the financial impact. Dynamism. The concept of materiality is dynamic and it's evolving. 10 years ago, I don't think organizations really take materiality as seriously as it is right now. Neither do they take sustainability reporting. But with the emerging trend in sustainability discourse year in, year out, the parameters are changing. And because the parameters are changing, and with the modern technology, when it comes to AI, when it comes to machine learning and some other modern business toolkits, things would change. And as they change, we need to be dynamic. So, and that brings us to the concept of adaptation as well. You need to develop a concept, but at the same time, you need to be very adaptive to the ecosystem. Visualization. There are a lot of tools in the system that you can use to present your materiality factor, but please, free of charge from myself, I'll tell you, do not copy materiality factors. You need to generate an organic material factor for your organization because people that are not in your industry do not understand what you do. And even people that are within your industry do not have your situation financially, economically, or environmentally. So when you copy what you're doing, you are inadvertently greenwashing. Prioritization. You need to prioritize materials in terms of impact and relevance. If you do business in an environment where there is abundance of water might not be a problem. Water might be a problem. So if you compare or benchmark report, you need to create action plan that address the most material sustainability issue. Do not pick and choose. Don't say our interest is looking at child mortality. Well, it's great. Child mortality is something that needs to be looked into. But if your interest is child mortality, but you have issues of land acquisition and people are looking to take you to court, yes, you can solve all the problem of child mortality, but if they win that case against you, you will be asked to remove your organization from the land. So when it comes to impact materiality or financial materiality, you need to look at the organic structure of the impact. Because if you don't, you're going to get and take action on them. Because if you don't, if you pick and choose, you're going to end up in a situation where you choose what is convenient for you, but then you get an exit out of the business. And then you need to be focused. You need to include specific targets, timelines, and responsibility. No blanket discuss. And also monitoring and reporting. Materiality is a lifetime process. It's an ongoing process, regardless of the nature of your business. You need to continually socio-economic impact assessment, materiality to help you to visualize how you can solve emerging problem, and even sometimes proactively hypothesize on what could be problems and solve them. And then ultimately verification. I would like to use the word triangulation in this context, because verification in this case is independent verification of sustainability reporting by an accredited third party. Yes, it's great, but for the most part, let's not forget that accredited third parties sometimes also are biased in their opinion. Even if they are not biased, they might be limited in their scope. So if they do not have experience in the area you look at, you need to verify, yes, but more importantly, use several factors to benefit who are similar or who exist in an environment to what. These are some of the key implementation standards when it comes to implementation of the framework. You have the ISO 26000 on social responsibility, which provide guidelines on social responsibility to help organizations translate principles into effective actions and sharing best practice to contribute sustainable development. Also is the UN Global Compact. The UN Global Compact is a non-binding United Nations pact with to get businesses and firms worldwide to adopt sustainable and socially responsible policies and report in their implementation. Think about it like your SDGs. They're not particularly binding on you. If you don't do them, you're not going to go to jail, but you're not basically complying to best practices when it comes or good practices. Then you have SA 8000 provides coordination of all types in any industry, in any country, in a way that is fair and decent for workers and to contribute their adherence to highest social standards. There are so many others. If you look at the World Bank ESF, for example, you look at the IFCPS, you look at the ILO standards, and there are industry specifics like as well, because we look at the RSB, Roundtable for Sustainable Biofuel Production. If you look at the RSPO, Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil Production, and so many organizations, they all provide all these parameters. And it's important for us to click on not just to the high street definition of these matters, but a bespoke one that speaks to the industry that we operate, that speaks to the nature of our operation and the ecology or the environment of where we interact. So again, some key reporting standards in this context include the Global Reporting Initiative, the GRI. I'm sure almost everyone on this call understands what that is. And then Integrated Reporting Framework, which is the IR. And some key reporting standards also includes the IFRS ISSB, which has come up with the IFRS S1 and S2, which basically so integration of these two standards, which is IFRS S1 and IFRS S2. And because it has now been consolidated, it now gives a form of a robust thinking pot where you can then say that all these other parameters that have been mentioned are now integrated or ingrained into these two parameters. But let's not forget, this is still required to be complied with local and national laws and other international best practices, because there are issues that are not also covered by this. For example, like I talked earlier about biodiversity, deforestation, ecosystem services, land acquisition and involuntary resettlement, development-induced displacement, and so many other greenfield problems, which the high street finance disclosure regulations. Now, you can read up all of these agencies, but let's not forget the fact that there are broadly two perspectives to look at the discourse. There is the high street modern business toolkit, which are regulators, which we have here, but there are also greenfield, which looks specifically at risk and impact. But when you're looking at materiality discourse, as we are discussing today, these parameters are adequate, or these agencies, these organizations, and these tools are adequate for you to use. Now, I know we're running out of time, so I will quickly go through the long-term value creation strategy. So when you say long-term value creation, you're talking about long-term value refers to sustainable growth and value creation that shareholders want to can actually be a value driver for the community of your practice. For example, if you have a rich R&D department that is able to produce a groundbreaking solution that can solve a global problem, then you are being of value, not just to yourself or that community or to your stakeholder or your shareholders, but to your community of practitioners. Because the moment that IP goes out of fashion, everybody can then begin to toe the line of your ingenuity to produce their own products, which would foster the frontiers of learning and creativity. So the importance of long-term value is endless. Because first of all, if you don't have long-term value in your business, you do not have a business. I said earlier, if you do not have a sustainable business, you do not have a business. So it gives a positive impact. Integrating environmental, social, and governance consideration into business strategies ensure lasting positive impact. Because oftentimes people see sustainability as a cumbersome or ESG as a cumbersome transaction or burdensome transaction. These people, they're just going to ask you to do this. They're just going to ask you to do that. It's actually a business tool, and it's supposed to help you to increase the lifespan of your business. Resilience. Businesses who have, and this is verifiable fact, if you check, you realize that organizations that have very strong ESG framework survived COVID without significant glitch. They survived COVID without significant glitch because they've actually mastered and prepared, because there's a component called emergency preparedness or disaster risk management. I'm sure Professor Steve Abba is here, he can say a lot about that. So disaster risk management and environmental and social risk management, they already have that resilient structure built. So when there is any shake in the global system or global structure, they have a cushioning effect that can solve that problem for them proactively. So it helps them build resilience. Growth. It helps them build growth because they can plan. They have information, they are informed, they are aware, they know the market, they know their market share, and they know where they want to move from where they are at the moment to where they want to be in 5 years. Of course, our plans are often not the plans of other stakeholders, but the moment we're able to plan, you might not land on where you want to be, but definitely you will not be where you are if you have proper planning, and that is growth. Integrated reporting. So here we want to talk about the techniques of long-term value. And one of the techniques in long-term value is actually integrated reporting, which means you need to do a double materiality discourse, data collection, impact assessment, materiality in itself, which would help you to create a robust sustainability report, which is integrated, which has your financial and non-financial risk, your financial and non-financial asset, your financial and non-financial exposure, and your financial and non-financial goodwill. And it's only when you have this kind of perspective that you can actually progress in business, because you have a good picture. It might not be a total picture, but you have a significant, a market edge in understanding of how you operate. Sustainability metrics, utilizing specific indicators like carbon footprint, resource efficiency, social impact metrics, governance standards, evaluate long-term value helps you, because if you know now we're in the era of energy transition. Everybody's in energy transition mode. So if you want to transit from coal-fired plant, for example, and you want to transit into gas-fired or solar-powered, you need to conduct your materiality to know what is important to your stakeholders, so that when you move from your firewood to your gas or to your solar, you are not leaving some people behind. You're basically considering them in your value chain because they know your business. They're part of your business. So you need to think about those sustainability metrics and how it affects your other stakeholders, so that when you make a change, they can also change alongside with you. Total impact measurement and management. It is critical for you to do financial double materiality, because it quantifies and monitors the company's social, environmental, economic, and tax impact, providing a view of the company's total impact. So if you don't understand where your impacts are coming from, chances are you throw money at the wrong direction and you attract an unnecessary attention and you put yourself into trouble. I always say to organizations, you don't have business doing philanthropy all over the place and being on the social media when your primary organic impact has not been fixed. You can't be sitting on a land that does not have a C of O and you are sponsoring a Christmas party for people who are not even in your catchment area. They would clap for you. You will have social media follows. But the day that a vacation notice or eviction notice comes to you, your project will be removed. And that will be the end of the business. Even if that business eventually gets a rescue, there will be a human cost impact hanging on the reputation of the organization. Life cycle assessment. Of course, most time life cycle assessment is related to climate solutions and greenhouse gas emission. But the truth of the matter is that life cycle assessment cuts across every sustainability impact. And it's important for us to conduct a life cycle assessment when dealing with any sustainability discourse. Social return on investment. It is important for you to measure your social return on investment, positively so or negatively so, because you need to understand what is your social impact on the community. So you've sponsored an inter-house sport program for the community. How did they receive it? What value does it drive? Who benefited from it? What does it say to the people? What does it say to your organization? What does your worker think about it? What do your stakeholder think about it? How can you improve the people? What value, what message are you looking to pass? If you don't understand all of these things, chances are you're throwing money at these people and you don't even understand what you're looking to drive. And it may give you share and likes on social media, but at the same time, do not forget, the day they ask you for salaram and you don't provide, you get into trouble. So you need to think through what exactly is your social return on investment for every investment that you conduct. Balanced scorecard. Using a strategic planning and management system that includes financial and non-financial performance measures to balance your short-term objective and your long-term objective. So you want people to be happy in a community. So what do? You go to them and build them a cathedral because they're a Christian community. Or you build them a big school because it's a community that does not have school. You haven't thought about how to hire teachers. You haven't thought about how to put classes, security for school itself, and you're just throwing money at things. You need to think about it that your immediate pressure point does not push you to make decisions that jeopardizes your business interest or your stakeholder interest in the long term. And that is where the balanced scorecard comes in. So in your stakeholder management considerations, you have engagement, communication, collaboration, impact assessment. I think I've talked about all of this at the beginning, and I would want to go in quickly into practical application and case study. And our case study is impact in markets to understand how it activities and total contribution to domestic economy, local communities, and employment. Now, when they're mapping their stakeholders, they have the Coca-Cola company itself, the people, the communities, the consumers, the customers, the partners for inefficiency, the NGOs, the shareholders, the government. I'm sure this is not just the list, but this is just a representation of what their stakeholders look like. Of course, they have more. And in their system, they have the upstream and the downstream. So on the upstream, they have the local suppliers, would help them to engage people that they consider closest, or what you refer to as core stakeholders to them. And when they are able to do this, it helps them to naturally harvest feedbacks that could constitute a roadblock to them. For example, if they're moving from sugar to aspartame, or they're moving to one particular form of sweetener to the other, or carbon that they use to carbonate the drink from one nature of carbon material to the other, they can naturally collect this kind of feedback. So it gives them edge because they're able to identify, map, and engage the stakeholders. So the input model is an assessment of 3 key dimensions. They have the directives, system, effect in their supply, the effect. Look at this. In this is effect caused by a system. Suppliers spend on goods. If you pay your workers, reality as a double-edged sword and a coordinated will that one part always wills the other. And as part of what Coca-Cola has done, this has given them this particular set of feedback. They've created over 855,000 training hours for people. which is basically increasing the capacity of staff. They have a total employee cost of 42%, which is 42% of them are women. They have over 1.8 customers served. I think that's going to be on a daily basis. And they have 1 in 12 jobs in the system, job power in the community. They have created approximately 473,000 jobs. They have a cumulative number of young people trained and communities between 2017 and 2023 to be 945,000. So basically, they are not only investing in their own business, they are also investing in their community. And when I say community now, I do not mean Oregon or Agidingbi in Nigeria, or I'm not talking about the Coca-Cola Hellenic company in the United States or in San Carlos or wherever their head office is. That's the way we're talking about, the community in which they exist. Physically, professionally, politically, they invest in these communities, and that is how they have been able to come up with this kind of feedback. I think, thank you so much for being part of the process. My time is well overspent. Thanks for being in the process, and look forward to your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allibay and Dr. Bankole, for this very insightful training section. I've learned quite a lot from today's training section, and I know that the participant has also learned a lot as well. We'll now be taking questions. And we'll start by taking questions in the chat box. If there's any, you could drop your questions in the chat box. And if time allows, there will be an opportunity for you to raise your hands and indicate if you have additional questions, and you'll be allowed to be unmuted. So, dear participants, you may start dropping your questions either in the chat box or just raise your hand, and then we'll unmute you if you have questions first. Do we have any questions? Okay. Mr. Isaac.
All right. Thank you very much, Ndidi. Please, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are able to hear you.
All right. Thank you very much. This was a really insightful session and very impactful. Thank you very much to Dr. Allibay and also to SPIN for putting together this very informative webinar. So my question is around having regulation or more or less legislation for the mining sector for socio-economic impact assessment. And there's this emphasis on having the EIA when they were about to do the Lagos Calabar Road. A lot of the conversation was around the EIA. But in truth, we saw that it was not just going to be an EIA thing, but there was also going to be extensive SEIA effects on that project. So my question is, what are Dr. Allibay's thoughts on legislation for having SEIA mandated for key extractive projects in the mining sector? As an example, what do you think we should be looking at, and what do you suggest we have based on global best practice? Thank you, sir.
Dr. Allibay, we can't hear you, sir. You're muted. Dr. Allibay, we can't hear you, sir. You're muted, please. Oh. Hello, Dr. Allibay. We can't hear you, sir. You're muted.
I was unable to unmute. Yeah.
Okay.
So I can unmute now. Thank you very much. This is a very, very interesting question because interestingly, I support, even up until recently, I support one of the two of the top three global mining organizations globally in Australia and in America. And when it comes to mining in Nigeria, I would like to say first of all that we are not in short supply of regulation and regulatory requirements when it comes to compliance with socioeconomic impact. Of course, the EIA Act is old and needs to be replaced. That, I think there is need for the community of practice to really impress on the government to change that, because as of today, the EIA Act of 1992 does not capture anything around climate change or social impact, resettlement action plan, development in this displacement, livelihood displacement. And these are very critical parameters when it comes to sustainability discourse. As a result, there is need for us to actually review that EIA Act and ensure that it captures issues of social discourse, demography, household expenditure, land access, vulnerability, income, and so on and so forth. So, and this is not new. I mean, the IFC performance standard of 2006 has 8 performance standards: assessment of impact, assessment and management of impact, labor and working conditions, influence control, community health and safety, land acquisition and involuntary resettlement, biodiversity, indigenous people, and cultural heritage. This 8 performance standard has also been repeated again in 2012. And in 2018, the World Bank Environmental and Social Framework designed a very robust environmental and social systems, 10 of them, 10, which has to do with the assessment and management of impact, labor and working conditions. Again, the first 8 of the IFC +2, which is financial intermediary and stakeholder engagement. So there are so many laws around us that can actually help in the mining industry in Nigeria. And unfortunately, mining is not like agriculture. So when you go to industrial mining, the impact is total. The people lose a lot because they lose land. They face hardship when it comes to effluent discharge and wastewater in the environment. They have a lot of impact as it relates to noise pollution. They have a lot of impact on the traffic. They have a lot of impact on the quality of the water that they drink. So mining communities that are into clinker extraction, in 4 or 5 kilometer radius to those communities, the water quality has been damaged for life. And it has been damaged from the aquifer. It's not that it's damaged at the well, it's damaged at the aquifer. So it's a big problem for the entire community. So it is very important for organizations to conduct social impact. And because the national law does not particularly put a strong hold on people to do this, the international communities that are funding some of these projects, such as the IFC, the World Bank, the EBRD, and other multilateral development lenders, need to basically ensure that these standards are ensured to the latter. They are implemented to the latter, particularly when it comes to social impact, because I'm a social performer, my PhD is in social performance, for example, and I always say all impact is social. They might start as environmental, they might start as health and safety, but ultimately they'll become a social impact. And why is that? They become a social impact because the reason why it affects us is because it's social. It's because the reason why we're worried about the climate change is because it affects us directly. If climate change does not affect human beings, if it's only affecting mammals, and those mammals, we don't eat them, nobody will bother. We will let them die. But because it affects us as human beings, then it becomes social. The same thing, wastewater, the same thing, biodiversity, the same thing, ecosystem services. What is my business with snail disappearing in the shores of Lekki Zone? But there are people there that eat snails, and they sell snails for us at the restaurants. So in order for us to protect that ecosystem, we need to invest in that parameter. So all impact in essence is social, and the EIA Act, or which is not supposed to be the EIA law, needs to look at the modern trend in social thinking and social risk and incorporate that. But one thing I would like to say back to your question is that the community of practice, and particularly organizations, need to be responsible. They need to be responsible to the point at which they are able to measure some of these things and benchmark in line with international standards. And the country also needs to do a lot of, the community of practice needs to do a lot of policy advocacy to ensure that organizations adhere to this international standard, not just our local laws, which give them a pass at every point in time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. We have some questions in the chat box. Let me see. Tai Taiwo says, how do you realistically handle aggressive communities who focus on wants rather than their needs?
Well, you see, you cannot you cannot start. So let me start from the beginning.
Dr. Allibay.
Yes.
Yes. Please, if you could just look through the questions, because some of them might interplay,
Yes.
so you can just answer them and we can save a bit of time. Because I see some of them, have a bit of interplay, so that, when you're responding to skeptical stakeholders, for example, you also want to talk about how that aligns with aggressive communities. So if you look at some of the questions, they overplay as well.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you so much. So I just saw the message now. So literally, I'm just reading the question, and I think it's just one question in all, basically. So someone is asking a question about aggressive stake communities, and another person is asking another question. Lagos facilities that long existing areas. Okay, so now the issue is this: when it comes to stakeholder management, remember when we started this conversation, I said it is important for you to have a baseline. So when you have your baseline, the same time you have your baseline, you develop your stakeholder engagement plan. If you have your stakeholder engagement plan and you have a baseline, communities cannot become difficult because the communities know where you're coming from. You both started together. So they will know your capacity and they know your threshold because they're all human beings. So once they know your capacity and they know your threshold, you'll be able to manage them. Now, let's say that they are aggressive. Once community becomes aggressive, you need to conduct what is referred to as community needs assessment. And that needs to be conducted by a very highly skilled organization or persons to help the community to understand their own needs as different from their wants. And once that is able to be established, it will be no-brainer for them to accept whatever it is. Because if you create a social buyback system at the back of that, you want an airport, no problem. The airport costs $2 million. We'll give you 45,000 naira. Can you pay the rest? That's our CSR budget for the year. And you can look at our projection. It's 5% of our running cost, and that is it. It is there. The day you're ready for the airport, you can run with it. If you're being transparent, they will be able to manage that with you. But if they assume that you're driving the Bentley and you're asking them to ride a bicycle, of course, nobody will buy into that. And I hope that clarifies. Thank you. Any other question?
Yeah, there's a question there around how do you carry out double materiality assessment?
Oh, sorry. I thought I explained that earlier in my presentation. So now to carry out double materiality assessments, oftentimes is not something that organizations can do. And I'm sure SPIN has a wide range of experts that are able to carry out double materiality assessment. And what it entails really is basically it's a methodic process. It's a methodic process in the sense that you need to carry out your socio-economic impact assessment, you need to carry out your financial materiality, you need to carry out your impact materiality, and you need to develop a matrix that shows what is financial, what is material, and what are cross-cutting material factors, and then develop a management plan at the back of it before it goes into your sustainability report. But I'm sure it's an expert area of practice. So basically, I'm sure if you speak to SPIN, they can recommend all sorts of consultancy. Like we run a consultancy, for example. There are so many other experts in the house that can help you with that. But ultimately, you need to first of all understand your organization situation. Because if you don't understand the situation of your organization, and you just think you find a template online and you can just run with it, you are going to end up writing a report that belongs to someone else, and it will not speak to your organization, and it will not have the intended result that you intend to have. And very soon, when people see through that you are inadvertently greenwashing, they're going to end up criticizing you for it, and it can lose your shareholders or stakeholders value.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allibay, for this interesting and eye-opening training session. And thank you for the participants as well. Your questions were thought-provoking. Thank you so much. We are gradually coming to the end of today's training section. To give the closing remarks, I would like to call on Mrs. Ini Abimbola. She is the Vice President of SPIN. Ms. Ini, please. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Ndidi. Dr. Allibay, I don't know if there's something wrong with my camera, but I think it's on. So, yeah. Thank you all for joining us today. Dr. Bankole Allibay, one of my favorite person. I want to say very big thank you. Thank you for the time. You always have a very busy schedule, but thank you so much for joining us today. I think that this is one of the most practical trainings that we've had today. I know that, and I'm hoping that most of the questions that have been raised have been answered. I saw a last question. Someone was talking about free trade zones in Lagos and how the regulatory bodies are not allowed to monitor their activities. I think that was just the only question that was not answered. But we want to say thank you. I think that part of the issues around this are also the framework within which some of the regulatory bodies operate. Sometimes there is always this conflict between the federal agencies and the state agencies. The state agencies believe that they have the oversight functions over certain state agencies or parameters, and so will not want to report directly to the federal agencies. I think these are all core Nigerian issues. So perhaps that is what is happening in the case of the free trade zones. But I really want to thank everyone that has asked questions, and particularly Dr. Allibay, because the training was, very simplified and easy to understand, and you break down, some of these core issues that I think that participants have found very, very useful today. I still see some questions coming on. I'm sure that there will be other times for us to be able to ask those questions. But if you're a member of SPIN, then you're on the WhatsApp group, and some of these questions, I'm sure that Dr. Allibay can answer them, and other members of the group as well can answer them. So for instance, this question around how do you categorize social returns from social investments? I think it's a very fantastic question and something that can be quite engaging as a conversation on the WhatsApp group. So we really want to thank you all for joining us this morning and for spending this 1.5 or almost 2 hours with us. Thank you so much for the time. We do present so many trainings, and if you are not yet a member of SPIN, we encourage you to please be a member of SPIN. We have this free trainings till the end of the year. By next year, it will not be free anymore, and it will be strictly our discounts will strictly be for our members. Also to intimate you that by next year, we are going to be a chartered institute. So that makes it even more difficult for those that have not joined SPIN yet. So it's important that you join the institute as soon as possible so that you can also continue to gain, because by the time we become chartered, most of these trainings will contribute as well to, your continuous learning, as it were, and will count as points for you as you go ahead. So thank you so much. Someone here is saying that they have recently been inducted and they've not been included on the WhatsApp group. Please send a message to the secretariat. Yeah, send a message to the secretariat, and they will be able to add you to the SPIN WhatsApp group. And I think the WhatsApp group that most of the members are on as well. For those who are asking how to join, the chair of the Executive Council, Kemi Shuken, has been posting the link over and over again in the chat room. So please look at it, click on it, and send in your registration. Someone is asking, how can I be a member with whatever your degrees, whatever your qualifications, please send in the registration. The membership directorate typically will go through all membership registrations and be able to assign membership categories according to what has been listed in the questionnaires that will be asked of you. So please, the General SPIN WhatsApp group platform, one of the, okay. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Allibay. Thank you to the Learning Development Directorate, thank you so much for the work that you've done in bringing these pre-trainings to us. We really do appreciate you. Thank you to the secretariats for constantly putting out excellent programs for us out here. We wish you well, and we ask that you please follow all our social media handles, our LinkedIn handles. We're on Instagram as well. We're on Twitter. Please follow all the handles so that you can get every information about more programs as we push them out. We have these trainings practically every month, if not twice a month. And these are all trainings that are very critical to the work that you do, irrespective of the sector that you operate in. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you so much to all our guests today. We look forward to seeing you at the next training and capacity building section by SPEN. Enjoy the rest of your day.
No,